So, when you think about your child and their education, when you think about the advocacy that you do for your child, what are some topics, what are some questions that you type in and do a Google search on? So, I'd be interested because one thing is that can give us some topics and questions that we can talk about today on our Q&A or Ask Me Anything show. But also that will also help me and give me information about topics, articles that I can make that would be useful for folks. So let me know, what do you Google late at night when you are needing some answers about your child's education, about how to be a more effective advocate for your child? One of the things I wanted to share with you while we're waiting for people to type in their comments and questions is I've been taking a person-centered thinking course. And it's interesting because I've taken person-centered planning courses before. And so this was intriguing when the name was person-centered thinking. And knowing that we have to have those perspectives of thinking differently before we can plan differently. Hey, Lori. Well, how are you? Can they only evaluate for an IEP in person? My student is e-learning. There are some things that can be done through the computer as far as evaluations. Some evaluations are like checklists, like if your child's doing wanting to, this team is wanting to know more about executive functioning skills for your child, that's a questionnaire that the student can answer, the parents, the teachers can answer. So for sure, something like that, e-learning doesn't matter, right? Because it would be just filling out that questionnaire. Even some of the academic testing you can do, via virtual learning. You would want to make sure that when the person doing the evaluation is writing up their report, that they mention that this was done through virtual, it was a virtual evaluation versus in person. There are some testing companies that are saying that, yes, they still believe you're going to get valid results. So Lori, do you know what kinds of testing they're wanting to do? Hey, Michelle. I know, and this is done by Cheryl, and her last name starts with a K. But yeah, she does all this graphic representation. And when I was at the Summer Leadership Institute in August, she had done some virtual backgrounds for people. So that was fun. Lori says, how long do schools keep school records? And that can depend on your state, that can depend on your district. So it's like some of the records, are taken from paper files and made into more, electronic files. I mean, if you look at IEPs and everything like that, those are done pretty much all electronically. So it's easy for schools, I think, to save more now because it's not like huge file cabinets full of records. But you would need to check with your state, Lori, and see also if your district has a different policy. I can't think off the top of my head that there's anything in IDEA, the federal law, that says they have to keep them school records for a certain amount of time, but I can certainly look into that, and then I can come back after the show and post that. So emotional. Yeah, it depends. Again, one of the common assessments that they'll do for emotional, social kinds of needs is the BASC. And again, that's a questionnaire. So there's one that the student can fill out, there's the parent one, and usually at least one teacher that knows your child. So again, it depends on what kind of assessment, right? If they're going to be doing some observation and to see the impact of your child's emotional needs when they're in the school. And if you're totally remote, then that can't happen right now, right? So you really need to look at what information are you trying to get from the evaluation and what are the different options. The school psychologist and the special ed teacher might be two people that you would want to touch base with and get their ideas of, like, if we're going to do this assessment, which ones are you looking at? And again, if you've seen some of my shows that I've done on evaluations, you always have the ability to consent for which evaluations you think would be helpful. And if you disagree and don't think some of the evaluations are going to be helpful, then you cannot give consent to that. And then, there's other things like figuring out, are you on a hybrid? Is your, child on a hybrid schedule? Are there some things that when your child's at school for a couple of days a week that they could do something, face-to-face versus virtual? And I can't remember, Lori, if you said if your child was full-time remote learning or if you guys are doing hybrid learning. So if you want to let me know. And Michelle, so I think it would be fun, Michelle, what is something that you have recently Googled when you think about your son or advocating for your son? Maybe you're thinking about, what's available for after high school, because I know your son is older. But what do you Google? And Lori said 100% e-learning. Yeah. And so, Lori, is this something that you need done, because this is that 3-year period and the staff is wanting to update some of the evaluations? Is this an evaluation that you've asked for? Tell me a little bit more about the background, and what do you think? Are you thinking that the school's going to get valid results if they do some kind of, virtual evaluation or not? I know some schools have got agreement with a parent to postpone some of the testing. Like I said, like class observation. If your child's 100% remote, they could do an observation of your child through the computer at home, but that's really, it depends. If you want to get information on how to support your child's emotional needs while they're on virtual, learning, then an observation of how how engaged your child is, those kinds of things, that could be done through virtual learning. A lot of times we think about the evaluations we do are to inform what we're going to write on an IEP, but the evaluation that maybe is necessary can also be used to inform on what that individualized distance learning plan is going to look like. So yeah, it kind of depends on the purpose of the evaluation, and like I said, kind of brainstorming with the people that do the assessments and say, what are some, other options where we could still get reliable information and get that done through e-learning. So if you are here with us live, keep typing in your questions. If you are watching the replay, type in your questions, because I'll circle back and I can answer these after the show. Okay, and here we got some more information. She said, my son was on an IEP for 7 years, then put him on a 504. He had a 504 meeting in November. The staff had no concerns. 3 weeks later, he had 3 Fs, 2 Cs, and 26 absences. He had never failed a class before. I asked for an IEP evaluation. Oh, okay. So your son's been on a 504 plan. And it sounds like either maybe the 504 plan wasn't written specific enough for the staff to be able to have real specific accommodations that they're going to use, or the 50 plan was really well written. It does have specific accommodations, but maybe it wasn't implemented well by all the staff. So that's another thing to consider, but it's always within your rights also to go ahead and say, we've tried the 504. I think it's time we look at the special education evaluation. And what do you think? Do you think that they're going to get valid results if they do something while your child's on e-learning? How are you feeling about that? Let me know. And Marie from South Carolina. And thanks for being with us yesterday also, Anne Marie. And when we were talking to the special ed attorney, Pat Rydell, and that's not how to say his last name. It's Dreidel. It's Radel. Pat Radel. And I keep saying his name wrong. And so do you have any other questions that maybe came up from yesterday, Anne-Marie? I know we were talking about different kinds of special ed myths and how to bust those myths, right? Let me get a drink of water. Yes, Anne-Marie said that was an awesome webinar. If you guys missed it, after the show, I can put the link in here. Pat Radel from New York is a special ed attorney and a father of 3 kids. His one son, Mark, has Down syndrome. So it's always interesting, I think, when special ed attorneys also are a parent. And I think that gives them that more full, perspective. I know it's helped me, when I was teaching, to have that parent perspective, and then also being a parent to understand what the teachers are going through. So having that kind of being able to look at other people's perspectives is really important. And Emery says, implementing accommodations. The team is struggling with using her assistive augmentative communication device. So implementing the accommodation. So what's the accommodation that she's going to use the device? Is it because the staff doesn't feel comfortable using it or programming it? Is there only one person in the building that knows how to program it? I know when my son was young, we used a Dynavox communication device, and it was like myself and the OT were the 2 people that were most comfortable programming it. And then what we had to do was call in a company rep and help the other staff become comfortable with just using it. And then if there were a couple other people that wanted to get training on programming, they could do that. But making sure that staff know how to use it, I think, is really important. It's one of, I think, the big reasons why communication devices aren't used that often. It can also be because the communication device is locked in the closet in the special ed room down the hall, because I've had that happen when I've gone to IEP meetings. So let us know, Anne-Marie, what do you think the issue there is? Hey, Michelle, talking about self-determination, how can that thought process drive your expectations for learning? So self-determination drive your expectations. So I guess I would need a little more information, because when I think of self-determination, I think that's when we help our kids develop those self-advocacy skills, right? And that they can make choices and they can go through the process of, you know, if I do this, will this consequence happen? Is that a good idea, a bad idea? You know, kind of that thought process of being able to choose different options is part of self-determination. And then I'm not sure how you're connecting that then with expectations for learning. So are you talking about the student has really positive determination skills, and then how does the student have high expectations for their learning? Or are you saying how does the staff have high expectations for his learning? So if you can just clarify that for me a little bit. And Lori says, no, every day is an argument because they want him to go in person. They are saying that they don't have records of his diagnosis for selective mutism, even though it was on 7 of his IEPs. So, yeah, so you're saying that no, that you don't think the virtual learning evaluation is going to be like really helpful. And so, yeah, I think, you know, what you could do, Lori, is to have some more conversations, maybe with your son first before you talk with the staff, and get your son's input. You know, and I don't know if he has an alternative way besides speaking that he is sharing with you what he wants, what he needs. But I think there's a lot of like tip of the iceberg kinds of things that we know, and we have to have more conversation to get beneath that. So, you know, when you say that the school wants him to come back to in-person learning, he's 100% remote now. So that, you know, where is that gap? And, you know, is it based on he is not going back to the building because of health reasons and with COVID and all of that? Is he not going back to in-person because he refuses to go back to school? Is it, you know, because he's not feeling supported and comfortable? I mean, and why are they thinking that in-person is really the part that needs to be needed, or, you know, it has to be in place? So to kind of tease out what the differences are there. I know it's one of those things that, you know, sometimes can be hard to answer without more background. So the other option I have, Lori, and for others too, is I do offer a free 30-minute phone consultation. So I can put that link in after we're done, and that might be something that would be helpful, Lori. There's like no strings attached, but, you know, we could just sit down and you'll be surprised in 30 minutes how we can come up with some next steps. So that might be something that's helpful, because I don't want to just kind of give generic answers. So Michelle was saying, who's gotten training? Can your district IT person or SLT help? Who's your local resource to help? Yeah, so thanks, Michelle. She's talking about, you know, difficulty with getting the communication device actually used. Yeah, and sometimes the IT people in the district have the training. Sometimes you have an assistive technology team for the district, and usually someone on that team is trained. And like I said, in our case, we just had the company representative come and do the training for the staff and for myself. And one of the things I look at when you ask for staff training is also, if your work schedule, allows it, for you to also attend any kind of training like that. So you're all getting the same information. You're there to ask your specific questions. But yes, definitely, I think look and see if it's the training um, that is the issue. Karen from Colorado. I know I haven't seen you. How are things? I haven't even seen like your goat pictures or anything on Facebook. So I hope everything's okay with you guys. How do I teach my 6-year-old to advocate for herself? I love it. And I'm glad that you're looking at doing that now. And so even for young kids, right, those are skills that we want them to start develop. So at a 6-year-old level, right, it's going to look real different than advocacy skills we talk to help a high schooler with. But 6-year-olds can make choices. They can choose, if you allow them, they can choose what they want for breakfast. They can choose, if they want to drink juice or milk. And you might think those are like silly little things. And it's like, well, of course, we already do that. Well, those are like the beginning of self-advocacy skills of knowing what you want and being able to ask for what you want. And so for kids that are using alternative ways to communicate and not using speech, we have to make sure that those choices are on their communication device, right? So making choices, sometimes just, little things like, it's time to brush your teeth, and they're, like, no, I don't want to brush my teeth. And sometimes you can just say, let's see, how long do you think it takes you to brush your teeth? And so for them to make a prediction on how long a task is going to take, what they need, they could say, no, I need you in there to help put the toothpaste on, but I can do the other parts. So she can start identifying things that they can do by themselves and things that they need help with. When Dylan was, starting at age 3, our son who has Down syndrome, he went to all his IEP meetings. There were a few that were like, we knew were going to be a little more heated, and he didn't go to those. But, even as, like, I remember in kindergarten, we had the IEP meeting in the kindergarten classroom. Dylan could be playing at the centers, coming back to the table every once in a while. But we could still ask him questions like, Dylan, what do you like to do at school? And that's self-advocacy, being able to tell other people what you like. Dylan, who are your friends at school? What don't you like? What's hard? Do you like recess? What do you like to play at recess? So even though those seem like, kind of like, well, those aren't really deep questions, but for a young kid, those are appropriate questions. And like I said, we kind of start them on that path of being able to speak up for themselves. The other thing I think that helps, even when kids are 6 years old and they're at their own IEP meeting, and even if it's just for a few minutes at the beginning or something, but they see how you are advocating. They see how you ask clarifying questions. They see how you wait and listen to the person's response. So that modeling that you're doing as an advocate now, because your child is really young, is also a way that your child can be learning self-advocacy skills. So, Michelle, I know you've probably done a lot as far as working on self-advocacy. So what other tips do you have? And Jessica said, I love these live meetings and so happy to share and learn so much from all of you. This is excellent. Thank you. Well, thank you for tuning in, Jessica. And just keep giving me feedback and information on what kinds of things would be most helpful for you guys. Lori said, my son's not going back because of his complicated medical history. He's been hospitalized 3 times with pneumonia. Free consultation would be great. Yeah, cool. I'll give you that because it's like I have I'm afraid I'll give you the wrong URL, but I have an online calendar and you can go on there and pick days and times that work for you and we can get that set up. And like I said, I offer that free half-hour phone consultation for any families that I'm not currently working with. So Michelle, we have another Michelle. Hey there. You are welcome. You are welcome. I'm glad that we can provide this kind of help and just brainstorm because we learn so much from each other, right? It's not like I have all the answers, but it's like through our group think and other people's experiences, it's pretty amazing how powerful we can be, right? Michelle says, we have found 20 minutes a day for Zoom school has totally eliminated the need for anxiety meds. Look at that. We want to stay remote because of these reasons. Yeah, I mean, I think so many times we kind of make the assumption that remote learning has been like a disaster for kids. And that may be true for some kids, but for other kids, it's like, yes, I found my happy spot. It's simple things like you can be in your own home. You can wear clothes that feel comfortable. You can have a choice about where you sit and do your Zoom learning. So congratulations, Michelle, on finding out like that sweet spot. Those 20-minute segments are going to be what's really going to be helpful. And to be able to reduce or eliminate anxiety medications, I mean, that's like a huge win, don't you think? So yeah, congratulations, because that's great detective work on your part to figure out what works. And it's like, I think probably even when more school districts are back in the building full time, I have a feeling that more districts are going to still have that remote option open for families because it has worked better for a lot of kids. And depending on the parent's schedule, right? I mean, that can be kind of the thing that gets in the way of like, I have to be at work. But yeah, so that's neat. It's always fun to hear when good things happen, right? Karen said, my kid, oh, good. Look at this, is a great self advocate. We spend a lot of time making sure people respect his expression. Yeah, see, and that's the thing. I mean, the whole, behavior is communication. And I don't know if you heard at the beginning, Karen, I was talking about I'm in this course that's for person-centered thinking. And it's like so interesting because it's like so empowering for the individual. And I'm kind of looking at it as far as my son as an adult who, has rents his own house with a couple of roommates, has staff that help support him. And that respect for his expression and that willingness to say, what is he really trying to tell us with this behavior versus making some kind of a negative judgment. So Karen, what do you think were some things that, because your son is young, what do you think, Karen, were some of the things that helped your son develop those self-advocacy skills? Because I think he might be a first grader. So let us know. Yeah, I know Emery talked about this yesterday. What are your thoughts about the most recent percentage of inclusion? And I was thinking of bringing that up or redoing it because I posted a table, a chart like a couple of weeks ago on my Facebook page, but it was a report. And I think that the data was from 2018 because it's usually always a couple years old, from the Department of Ed. And it listed the percentage of students that were included. I think the difference was like 80% of the time, or 40 to 79%. Um, Students with intellectual disabilities were only being included, as far as the nationwide kind of average. And I think it was 17% of the kids are included with an intellectual disability for at least 80% of their day. So generally, when I look at those kind of numbers and those state reporting and all of that, it's like, I don't, I don't know. It gives us a feel for how things are, I think, but I think we already knew that. How many kids are, really included very well. But the other thing is, like, each state, even though they have like the same report that they're supposed to turn in to the U.S. Department of Ed, I think, they kind of tweak the numbers. And so I'm never sure, like, are these inflated numbers? Are these really realistic numbers? But then you look at only 17% of kids with intellectual disabilities are included in general ed classes. I mean, if that's an inflated number, that's even worse, right? Um, but yeah, I think the bottom line is we have a long way to go, right? Um, and I don't think that's a surprise. Uh, and unfortunately, I think I'm trying to think if somebody I had seen where they were saying that number of people with students with intellectual disabilities. I think that number has been staying pretty stagnant at that really low level for the past few years. And so, as parents, that tells us we still have a lot of work to do. As teachers, as educators, as administrators, we have a lot of work to do. As university professors preparing people to be teachers, we have a lot of work to do. The good news is there are people who have figured this out. If you go to Swift Schools, and I think it might be a .org, but they have been working for a number of years on helping specific school districts. And on their website, Swift Schools, you can not only see what districts they've been working in, but also some of the research that they found. There's also articles in there of strategies and how they got the change to come about. But yeah, we're not anywhere near having kids be in inclusive settings. And I look at if we had more teachers trained on universal design for learning, I think that would make a huge difference. If we have more staff trained on co-teaching, that would make a huge difference. And I just got an email this morning from Julie Costin, and she's going to be offering another co-teaching class for educators. I think it's going to be on Saturdays in March. So I need to put a note of all these things I said I'm going to put a link for. But the co-teaching class that Julie's going to be offering is, I think it was only like $149. And not that teachers necessarily have $149, to pay for. But if it's something that's in the IEP, as far as there's going to be staff training on co-teaching, and then the district is responsible for providing that. So I'll put the link in for that co-teaching training, and you can share that with your staff. I'm thinking of some families that I know that that's been a topic that the staff has been asking. I wish we knew more about how to do this. And so those are the perfect people, right? That you want to say, I just found this. It's happening in March. We can get this done. So, hey, Mindy. And Mindy, you're the person I was just thinking of. Because Mindy does have a staff person that really wants to do more push-in services. And so, Mindy, I'll make sure that you also get that link that of the class that Julie Cosson's offering. And usually, I just read her email real quickly, but usually, if there's like 10 staff people in the district that want to take a class that Julie's offering, usually there's like a discount for a group. So that might be something to bring up to, either the person that you're working with, the principal might be able to pay for it, the special ed director, but I would really look at ways to get that incorporated. Mindy says, one thing the school has said to me regarding trainings in the past, the principal said to me, I can't force people to take trainings outside of work hours. What do you say to that? Interesting. Well, I mean, you can't force people to change either, right? So there's no guarantee by going to a class that they're going to be learning, um, and implementing it. So there are a couple different things. One, you could look for classes that are during the teacher contract hours. Some of those classes sometimes are available. This co-teaching one that I mentioned, I'm pretty sure it's on Saturdays in March. So it's like, okay, so unless there's Saturday school, that's going to be outside the teacher contract hours. Depending on your school district, there are some school districts that have kind of like given comp time. Like if you spend 2 hours, on Saturday going to this class, then we will get a sub for 2 hours and make that up for you. And you can, not be in the building during that time. It really depends on teacher contracts. Some are written really specific, but, I wonder if the principal is saying that as far as like, therefore we can't do that. But it's like, if the training is needed, then they have to think of a way. So maybe instead of going to a Julie Costin class on a Saturday, they bring somebody into the school building and they do some, professional development when there's an early release day for the kids, or when there's a professional development day on the school calendar. If they're not already figured out what they're going to be doing on all those, that could be a time. So there are times usually in each building for some kind of staff development. Sometimes it's during a staff meeting. But, if there's a need for teachers to have additional training in order to support your child, those are considered supplemental services and supports. And then we just have to be creative. And maybe, the person in your situation, Mindy, that wants to learn more about co-teaching, she might be saying, are you kidding? I'm fine with doing that on a Saturday. The reality is most teachers do lots of work outside of their regular hours. So yeah, I think it's a matter of being creative. So if any of you guys else have ideas of that, let us know. Michelle's from Nebraska, and she said that her son is 14, has Down syndrome, and I frequently testify in the legislation regarding bills that affect schools and services. Yeah, so talk about like a great policy advocate, right? Because a lot of times, as parents, we're more focused on our own child, and so we have that individual kind of advocacy, but that policy work on education bills, restraint and seclusion bills, different things like that are like really important also. And that's another way that your son can see you, as an advocate speaking and testifying. And as a 14-year-old, he might, want to also sign up for a time to do, to be involved in the testimony. because I think a lot of times legislators are, more in tune when it's a personal story and it's the person with the disability that is speaking. And that leads a lot of credibility to, what they're testifying about. So thanks for doing that, Michelle. That's like super important, right? Jeanette, how to increase self-motivation, huh? Seems my daughter, now she's 10 and a half years old, is becoming more reliant seemingly on prompts to do things. She used to be more self directed. So, isn't that an interesting observation that you've made? So, then I think, Jeanette, one of the things that I would suggest, and like I said, the rest of you pipe in too, is figuring out, what is it? Academics tasks that she's waiting on more prompts to do. Is it, things like getting dressed, brushing your teeth? Is that what she needs prompts to do? And then see, like, are there certain people that she waits for the prompts before she does anything? Are there other people that she knows they're going to expect her to do it, and so she just does it? Um, Self motivation, I think, the other thing is to look at ourselves. If it's something you don't like to do, am I self motivated to vacuum? No. So guess what? My husband vacuums. Um, and so self motivation, or that like intrinsic kind of reward kinds of stuff, it can really be, I think tricky. Um, Finding things, I always kind of go back to people's strengths and what they're interested in. And when teaching a new skill, let's do it in an activity that is going to be really motivating for them to begin with, and kind of build those skills through, if she likes cooking, for her to be able to find the ingredients in the pantry and put them on the counter. She's probably going to be motivated by that if she's like excited about the end product of the chocolate chip cookies. And then to say, look at, you are so good. You got all the things out, you put them on the counter, and recognize her for, taking that initiative. But yeah, it can be tricky because, like I said, even as adults, when it's something that we don't like to do, we don't have a lot of self motivation. So for a 10-year-old, that can be hard too, right? Um, Rachel said, could maybe, look at this, school PTA or booster clubs help with any of that as well? Yes, yes, yes. I love that idea, Rachel. And I think she's talking about paying for professional development for staff. A lot of PTAs will have a certain amount of money that they don't, each grade level gets so much money each year to buy materials for their classroom or to take classes. So, yeah, I mean, that could be a project that the PTA takes on. We've got a workshop coming up about co-teaching. We want as many of our staff to go as we can. How can we support that as a PTA? Or, like you said, if you've got booster clubs and things like that. Michelle says he also sees people like him with disabilities testifying. Yeah, I hope this lays a foundation for his future, that he will also continue to be active in our state. Exactly, Michelle. And so I think she's responding to that question about how do we teach those self-advocacy skills, and self-determination kinds of things. And so, yeah, being around other people, and sometimes, adults or somebody a little bit older than you, with a disability, and seeing what they accomplish, and knowing that, these are things that they can look to in the future also, can be really helpful. And Anne-Marie says our Partners in Policy Making was canceled this year. Oh, darn. I was supposed to participate this year. Yeah, that's a really wonderful program. So hopefully next year that will be back for you in South Carolina. I did a similar program, Partners in Leadership in Colorado, when Dylan was like 3. And it was pretty amazing, fantastic. So, yes, cool. I'm glad that you guys are having that in South Carolina. And like I said, hopefully things are going to be calming down and the fall will look different. Hey, MC from that Northeast region. How are things? I think you're in Massachusetts, right? Did you guys get like snowed in? We live in Southwest Idaho and we have such mild winters after living in Colorado for 40 years. And I love mild winters. Mindy says maybe start with one area to start reducing prompts. Good idea. And then move on to another area in a few weeks or months. Allow her success in one area with tons of praise and then move on when there's no longer a factor in that area. Yeah. And so thanks, Mindy. That's a great idea, is to, take one little small area and, reduce the number of prompts there. Sometimes, making a tally point or something, to keep track of how many prompts you're really giving. Maybe you think you're giving a lot and you really aren't, or it could be the opposite way too, right? And then see if there's a way that you can kind of decrease that. Yes, and Mindy likes Rachel's idea too. So I love it. I love it. What other questions? Or the other thing, I am serious. I'm curious. What do you guys Google when you're, what have been some of the topics or questions that you've Googled recently when it comes to your child or advocacy kinds of things? Or, what are some future topics that you want to have? Next week, we do have a guest, and she is the founder. Lisa Orvis is the founder of the Facebook group Educational Strategies for Children with Down Syndrome. So she's going to be with us, her daughter Chloe and her husband Bob. And what I think will be so neat is they're going to be talking about, the benefits of inclusive education. And we rarely have fathers on our show to get the father's perspective. And in this case, Chloe's dad has been really helpful. She's been taking a guitar class during remote learning. And both her and her dad have been, practicing, learning all the chords and strumming along and singing along. So next week we do have guests that will be with us talking about inclusive ed. But I also, it's like, what other specific kinds of things would you guys like? And then I can, find speakers or, do our own presentation on that. And Rachel says, okay, learning where support groups are in our communities. So that's something that you've been looking at. We are all new to this as of 2 weeks ago. Oh my goodness. I'm trying to find my parent support tribe. And so Rachel, where do you live? And yeah, I think that's really important that you're seeking out those support groups, because they can be so helpful, just like here, right? You meet families with kids at a variety of different age levels. I know when Dylan was real little, I liked going to our Down syndrome support groups because it was like, who's walking? Who's talking? How, and I get to ask the parents, when did they start walking? When did they start talking? And, you just get to some nitty gritty kinds of questions that you can have answers for. And then also just learning all the resources that parents have found. I know we have a Trailblazer group for parents, and Mindy has been great bringing up the topic of reading and what are the different reading programs that can be successful, and specifically for kids with Down syndrome. So that's been something that we've been kind of going deeper into. So if there's topics like that that you want us to, delve into in more depth when we have our weekly live shows, let me know. Oh, Rachel's in Minnesota. Well, you've got, I don't know, Rachel, if you know about PACER, PACER, but that's the main parent training and information center from Minnesota. And that would be like an excellent, statewide resource place for you to go to. If you want, I can look up their contact information and post it later. But if you would call PACER, I'm sure, they have different like parent advocates, parent, advisors, and they would be aware of like what part of Minnesota you live in and, what support groups are already there. A little bit of trivia. I was born in Minnesota. I was born in Grand Rapids, Minnesota, but I only lived there for 6 months. Then we moved. Mindy, I've been trying to learn how funding works in the schools so that I can do better asks, but I'm sure that varies state to state. Yeah, and that's, one of the things that and I think, Mindy, you heard some of our broadcasts yesterday when Pat was talking, but the attorney, in budget, funding is really not supposed to be brought up in meetings, but the reality is we know that, that's a looming issue for a lot of districts. The funding level is really specific as far as state by state, as far as, the percentage of state funding that goes to districts. Different districts, depending on how the state is set up, get revenue from different taxes in their location. And so that's always something that a lot of states struggle with because of the inequities of, smaller rural communities usually don't have the same amount of funding that they need that larger districts do. So that's good that you're looking at that. And one of the things that you could do, Mindy, is I don't know what Indiana's Parent Training and Information Center is called, but you could also start there and they would be able to give you some information. The other website, and I'll have to write this down to remember, is the Advocacy Institute. It's in Virginia, but it's, like they have all kinds of national information. And one of the things, the tabs on the Advocacy Institute's website is Follow the Money. And it talks a lot about IDEA funding, but also how things are distributed to states. And so that could be a really good resource for you, Mindy, and I'll put that up here. Michelle, some parents are saying do not sign any sort of releases. Is there something specific we should watch out for? Thanks. That's a great question. As an advocate, I generally suggest that parents do not sign a blanket release of information, like, for the child's doctor or, counselor or something like that. And it's not that I don't want there to be collaboration between private people and the school people working together, but I want to know what they're talking about. So I suggest to parents that they, include a sentence on the, release of information page that they give, permission, consent for the district to contact these people for this kind of information. So you want it to be specific and say, as long as you were on the phone, part of the conversation, or that the school will tell you what information they're looking for, you will go to the doctor, you will go to the counselor, ask for that information, read it yourself, see if it's something you really want to share with the district. And you kind of be the middle person that, they don't just write to the doctor and say, give me all the records. And the parent said, you can do this. You want to still be in control of what information gets shared. So I suggest doing some kind of a short sentence, consent for this if I'm, involved, on the phone, or if it's a face-to-face meeting. If there's written material that's requested, I will, seek that out from the person and share what's, important, or share what I think is relevant. Because I think parents sometimes are a little bit leery of just, saying anything and everything, because some of the information that, outside people have about our family, our kids, is not something that is really relevant for the school. And some of that you want to keep private, and that's totally fine. Thank you, Michelle. I need to get another drink. I tell you, I've got these allergies. So I love all the discussion and the back and forth. So I will be posting the link if you want to schedule a half-hour free phone consultation with me. I'll post the link for the Advocacy Institute for Julie Costin's co-teaching classroom. Rachel, if you need information on how to get in touch with PACER, or Mindy, how to get in touch with your parent training information center, I can post those. So Rachel, you must know PACER. She said, yes, PACER also learned about the Reading Center out of Rochester. They have actually partnered with the Mayo Clinic and are offering all Minnesota educators, look at this, a free Dyslexia 101 class. Wow, to help educators with 5 hours of free training. Thank you for the link. Yeah, so isn't that fantastic? And so that is like, wonderful. I mean, if you would want to see how that could be done in your state, you might want to call PACER or go to this, the readingcenter.org/dyslexia 101. And that's the other thing too. So I'm glad you brought this up, Rachel, because most states have some kind of State Department training that, they have like archived webinars on there. So teachers during their planning time, or during their lunchtime, or during the evening, they can go on there and get, and most of that is free training. And a lot of that is geared towards educators, but I always encourage parents to go on and register for those free webinars that your State Department of Ed is offering. Usually the quality is good. I know in Idaho right now, Paula Cluth is doing a 3-part series on inclusive education. And yeah, everybody, I'm sure, was figuring teachers would be going to it, but guess what? I signed up too. So not only share those webinars and information with your teachers, because I think a lot of teachers don't even know that their State Department offers training like that, as far as like virtual webinars, but also for yourself. Most state departments of ed have, weekly, biweekly newsletters that go out, and a lot of their mailing list are educators. But you as a parent can sign up for that too. So you find out these are the projects that our Department of Ed is really, zeroing in on this school year, or the State Board of Education made this decision. I mean, there's a lot of information that you can get from your State Department of Ed. So in your free time, you can go to your State Department's website and just kind of look around and see what's available. Make sure the staff at your school knows about it and see if there's things that fit with your schedule that you could sign up for. Mindy says, thank you as always. See you later. Okay. And Mindy, we've got our Trailblazer Q&A tonight too, if you want to come on and we can talk more there. Anne Marie, do I need to be asked for permission to do annual therapy assessments, end of year testing? So if it's end of year testing that everybody in the school is taking, it's not a specific individualized test for your child, no, you don't have to give consent for that. If it's, if the PT or the occupational therapist is doing some kind of different assessment versus just like progress monitoring, then you would want to give consent for that. So there's a difference between, ongoing kinds of, like I said, for progress monitoring purposes, and you don't have to give your consent for that, each time that happens throughout the year. But if it's, for annual testing for writing the IEP, yeah, you need to give consent for that. And the other thing that I always talk when I talk about evaluations is that you're a member of the evaluation team. And I think it's helpful for you to have a face-to-face, either in person or through the internet, with the other team members at school, and really look at what information is going to be helpful and what you really need versus because it's his annual review time, we're just going to do all this. So be a part of the conversation and don't just sign the consent for evaluation without having that conversation about what information do we already have. We don't need to duplicate this part, but maybe we're missing this aspect. So it's more targeted and not just kind of a blanket thing. So good questions today, folks. I think we're close to the top of the hour, are we? We are. So we have some new people here that might not have my book. So why don't we do a good book giveaway? I saw this on Amazon. It's called The Art of Advocacy, A Parent's Guide to a Collaborative IEP Process. And I kept it short because I know we're busy people. But I put scenarios in here of things that actually happen at meetings, how you could respond to that. I think there's a science to advocacy, which is knowing the law and all of that. There's the art to advocacy, which is more about learning what kinds of questions are more helpful to ask, being able to respond in writing with your concerns or whatever. So effective communication, things like that, but specifically geared for the IEP meeting. So what I'll do is my scientific way, Anne-Marie's probably seen me do this, where I'll just close my eyes, I'll scroll through the comments, and I'll stop on somebody, and you will be the lucky winner of this book. Okie dokie. So I'm closing my eyes. I'm scrolling up and down, and I'm stopping on Karen. And I don't know, Karen, you might already have the book, but what's nice is if you already have it, I'll still send you another one, and you could give it to a friend, right? So, all right, Karen. And come back next week. Like I said, we'll be having Lisa Orvis, her husband, and her daughter Chloe will be on talking about inclusive education. So it will be great to hear that family perspective and also to hear Chloe's perspective, right? So until next Thursday at noon Mountain Time, I am Charmaine Tanner. I'm passionate about helping parents become even more effective advocates for their kids and helping their children develop those self-advocacy skills. So have a great week, and we shall see you back, same place, same time, next Thursday.